everyone. Today I'm going to talk about October. So this is a moon day with the moon in Scorpio. So for those of you who are moon Scorpio sensitive, it's going to be 2.5 days for the moon in Scorpio, and then it's going to get brighter, lighter again. So what I do to pass the time is an astrological forecast. And the Mercury, the ruler of the hour, is here in the 10th house, whole sign speaking, 8 degrees separating from an opposition to Saturn, but not yet applying to oppose Neptune, which is a good time to do mercurial stuff, like astrology. The ascendant is in the malefic 18th degree of Sagittarius, with its ruler in the 6th house, Jupiter. And the highest planet here is the Sun in 25 degrees Virgo, applying to oppose retrograde Neptune. So a little bit of blessings before I begin the forecast. So blessings for moon and things related to the moon, which is the ruler of the day. And so a little bit of a story. My mother was here and she cleaned my living room. She has a moon in my 7th house living room, and she didn't know it, but she cleaned my moon altar. So moon is the mother, and so blessings to our mothers, our relations with our mothers, caregivers, and for those who have difficulties with these connections, so blessings to heal the wounds around this connection. Sometimes the right thing is actually not to be connected in extreme cases, and that is okay. And sometimes it's good to heal. So healing can take many forms, and for whichever person, I wish for that to take the right form of healing. So you will be caring for your own sense of safety, and one is also a sense of safety. So may we feel emotionally safe, open, and feel that and meet our needs with ease, not on the account of other people, but meet our needs with ease, and be able to manifest in time, to grow crops in time, to have easy cycles, whether you're menstruating, or easy cycles in our lives. This is a bit of a moon blessing for the Mercury. So a little bit of Mercury blessings, so blessings for children. Okay, for children, for them to be protected from exploitation, child labor, recruitment to armies and stuff, all sorts of harms. So protection over the children, for our trade system to be good for the people that comprise it. Okay, there is no economy without people, and so good people make good economy. And so for the trade to reflect that, to be supportive of people, as well as heuristics and law, and for our words to be supportive of ourselves and in favor of one another. So to be truthful and kind. So now let's go to October astrology. So a little bit of astro tools here. And we know that already that October, because everybody's been talking about this, we have two, not one, but two eclipses. And the first is going to be on September 5th, October. That's the greatest. The first October eclipse is going to be on September 15th. Okay, October 14th, which is going to be a new moon, and that's going to be in 21 degrees Libra. And the 28th, which is going to be a full moon, and that's going to be an eclipse on Taurus, but with the notes on Aries in Aries. Okay, so I did a separate video about these eclipses. They are very meaningful, and they deserve their own video. And this video, I hope, is going to tell us what else is going in October except for the eclipses. So, um, as for things we need to be aware of, so Mercury is direct the whole month, Venus is direct the whole month, and so is Mars, Jupiter retrograde, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, and Pluto retrograde. Lilith is direct and Chiron is retrograde the whole month. So this is for the retrogression. We don't have something going retrograde, going direct, which makes it a bit easier because this is eclipses month. We do have an ingress of Lilith to Virgo here on October 3rd. That's worth taking a look at. So Lilith changes signs. A lot of people will be relieved because Lilith in Leo has been associated with both the context of being yellow and kind of honoring our inner tabloid. It's like it's okay to enjoy gossip. It's okay to want, as long as it's not overboarding or totally like dismissing or something like that or slandering. It's okay to enjoy gossip, but the other aspect of Lilith in Leo has also been really acting in alignment with our gut publicly. Okay, and because Leo rules the heart, it was matters of the heart as well. Leo also rules in the entertainment industry. And we've had a whole lot of Vallata. Venus is still there. She's just trining Aries on this ingress. But the moving on of Lilith from Leo to Virgo will be a relief for a lot of people. It's like we're done with the tabloid thing, and we're also almost done with the sex scandals exposure. For many of you, okay, not Pisces ascendants like me who are just beginning Lilith in their 7th house, but the majority of people is going to be like, oh, it was good that it was, but we really are ready to move on to Lilith in a more practical sign, a sign that deals maybe with herbs, with healing. Lilith in Virgo, I predict, will be more exposure around perhaps herbs that help with pregnancy planning. Okay, so herbalism and pregnancy planning, herbalism and the because Lilith is about being liberated. It can be being sexually liberated, though I must admit, when Lilith was going through Cancer, which was my 5th house, all I wanted was a hug, and this is the house of romance and sex. So it just liberated my desire to want to hug, I guess. Um, but in general, Lilith is that. Well, she basically wanted to be eye level with her husband. Okay, not above, not below, and because of that, she's very autonomous around the sexuality. The sexual autonomy is incredibly important to her. And when it comes to Virgo, so she can use herbs to have sexual autonomy. It can be both herbs for fertility and herbs for planning pregnancy. She might be more concerned about exposing the trade system and how is our economy serving our sexuality or not. Okay, it can be right from the tax, the pink tax, or why does hygiene products for menstruation cost so much, or why does shaving yourself if it's pink costs more than shaving yourself if it's blue. Razor stuff like that is the details. Okay, there's also the details of commerce, and it can also be how does the economy or the trade system supportive or not supportive. It's not so much about taxation and more about trade and exchange. So I don't predict her to do like Venus in Capricorn, which was like, why am I listed with my spouse in the taxes, blah, blah, blah. That was a Venus Pluto in Capricorn. This one is more, you know, my perhaps equity in trade or finding investments that are fit for me, that are grounded, are securing me in kind of like unstable ground, or even wanting to be fiscally literate and spreading fiscal literacy, and kind of openly talking about how good it is for the sex life to have that literacy. So it could be herbs, it could be trade. We talked about medicine, healing. What more? Virgo. Cleanliness. So we perhaps may have alternative views, or kind of like openly talking about cleaning in relation to our intimacy. If I think about the movement of discussing how to clean, um, basically discussing all the soaps and the hygiene products that are actually not good for the pH level of the vagina. Okay, I don't remember. I don't know to delineate when was that conversation. We can have another surge of that. It's kind of like, hey, that thing is making money off of our vaginas, but it's not good for our vaginas. Okay, so that is another thing that I predict with this one. So this is happening in the shade of the first eclipse, and with Sun in Libra there. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting ingress where we're not going to have to deal with the luminaries, okay, with the heart centered stuff around Lilith. Okay, our heart breaks, our disillusionment, the connection between the heart chakra and the sex chakra, sexual exploitation, and the heartbreak around sexual. It's like all this really heavy stuff. But also sexual liberation and the need to be open and vulnerable around this and something like that. Sex scandals and so on. So now we're kind of like, okay, we've had enough of tabloids. We are ready to move on to more practical stuff that actually assist in our life in a different light, and in the various, the small details that we finally talk about without shame, that make our world a better place. Okay, the small details that make our world a better place when they are changed. Yeah. And of course, Mercury also rules children, so child sexuality and everything, the light and the dark and the whatnot can be involved, but it's mainly those other things that I mentioned, unless I'll be surprised. In this ingress, Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, is opposing Neptune. So the communication, at least when Lilith ingresses, is a bit not well. It is not that it is untrue. It is just that it is spiritually true, or could be prone to it's kind of like you want to speak something clearly, but there's a fog in 12 o'clock to you. Okay, you want to speak out, but there's a fog in 12 o'clock to you, so you're speaking into a fog. So you could be speaking clearly, but there's a fog, and what the listeners hear are the combination, depending on where they're at, if they're closer to you or they're closer to the fog, if they're hearing you or they're hearing the clouds, or you in the masquerade of the clouds. And so different people would be perceiving the communication differently, but if you're having to rely on trustworthy, truthful, reliable communication, this is not yet the time. Okay, it's a transient. Mercury is going to move from this degree, but there's a reason I'm having this episode right now and not when Pluto is applying to Neptune. Okay, so that is one. This Lilith enters Virgo. Mars enters Scorpio on so important ingresses. Okay, when the planets change sign. Mars enters Scorpio in October 12th. There's 2 days before the eclipse. So it enters its home sign, it trines Saturn, it sextiles Lilith, there's also on Regulus. It's a very lovely ingress. The way I see it, it's a very lovely ingress. It's separating from Ketu. Um, Moon in Virgo, not really doing anything in relation to this Mars, but this ingress is kind of a softer Mars, a deeper psychological, scorpionic, but also softer Mars, a Mars that acts favorably in alignment with Lilith, which I love, and the Mars that is also enduring. Okay, this is on the ingress. Okay, it's the mark of the ingress. And that is a Mars that can do something right from the get-go that can have favorable long-term impact. So if you're doing anything, Marcy, at this point in time, check your ascendant for your activity, but you could very well be culminating. This is a closure. The moon is about to is decreasing. It's about to go into its eclipse, but also new moon phase. And so whatever action you take around the 12th of October, you're going to have to adjust the ascendant and midheaven, kind of like the hour to your own time. But the ingress into Scorpio can be a culminating action, that seals the deal on something that is going to have favorable long-term effect. It's going to be in alignment with that inner gut, that inner Lilith. For those of you who absolutely have to find a time to commit, although Venus in Virgo is not favorable for that, she is kind of sextiling this Mars. And I'm not saying propose, but definitely, the ties of eroticism and longevity for the connection are there, but you have to be cautious about that Lilith opposing Saturn. Okay, so I like the Mars Lilith, I like the Mars Saturn. There is still the tension between Venus and Saturn. So you want to be cautious there, but it can definitely be a closure. If you have to separate from someone, without that turning into a sex scandal, broken hearts, although the sun is in a malefic degree here, I have to admit, and Mercury is combust. But if you have to seal the deal to make a closure, just respectful to your owning your sense of eroticism, kind of like not discontinuing a certain something, that can be an excellent time to do so with a bit less of the kind of like scandalous things that we get. And it can definitely be something that is it's like this was in alignment with my sensuality and my eroticism, and that could go on a long term, but I choose to let this go now for, let's say, I don't know, practical reasons, or I see that my eroticism in general does not serve my longevity, and the only mediator we have here is drive or sex. So that can be, but for others it can be a bit of a more commitment as well in here. So that is a very lovely ingress. It's just the ingress, it's not the entire Mars in Libra. And of course, October 5 is going to conjunct Ketu, which means it's going to be with the nodes. I know that a lot of people talk about the financial or the fiscal trouble with Mars on Spica, conjuncting Ketu on 5 October, right before an eclipse, Sun in the 11th degree, which is risky because if there is financial crisis, then anything associated with those Sun figures in Libra, they can actually unalive themselves, pardon the trigger, due to financial crisis. Yes, that can be, okay? And the Sun here is ruling Venus. Venus is trining Aries, but she's applying to oppose Saturn and conjunct Lilith again. Moon in the last degrees of Gemini. Okay, this conjunction is, it is, and the moon trines it. So, what shall I say? We are going to feel it. It is not an eclipse. The nodes are hit by an eclipse, but when something hits the nodes, we still feel it. And And then the question really is whether the eclipse is going to do about this, because Mars is going to be in Scorpio with the eclipses. Okay, so the question is, what's Mars in Scorpio going to do about this? Because this is Mars Libra. Libra, yes, it does rule trades. It's also very political placement. Okay, it's not just trade. You say money runs the world, resources run the world, yes, but with trade there is this thing of stocks, especially, where you have the company and its dividends, and then you have the stock, and the stock can be a bubble that's unrelated to the company. And so resources does not necessarily equal economy and yield. And that is something that we need to remember. What is this crisis about? Is this crisis about resources, or is this crisis about economy? And then what happens when the economy drops? Well, basically, what you're left with is the people. Okay. It's not for nothing that when I offer you readings, I say, buy me a talisman or buy me a course, or kind of like let's exchange value, because I cannot rely on, just to be quite frank and open with you, I've been looking for one whole year for a local accountant services that support international businesses, to no avail. So I'm forced to remember the time where me and my parent were in Europe and we bought a car there. I wanted to bring it to Israel. So we could try to find somebody at the tax services, kind of like, okay, what do we need to pay? How much do we need to pay? Kind of to make the calculation. And we came there. Only when we came to Israel, they said we have to pay so much taxes that we just went for another month in Europe, sold the car, and came back. And that was it was kind of like a scorpionic out of spite thingy, but I enjoyed the extra month of traveling. um, and that's the situation where you want to do something, you want to see, how do I align with taxation? Okay, how do I, it's like, you got your own rules, I have no problem paying taxes, just tell me how much I need to pay. Just find me a service that knows what to do, and you can't find this, so you say, okay, fuck it, I will sell the car, I will give a reading for a talisman. And this is not anti-charity or anti-taxation, it's basically pro-humanity. This, what I expect this to be with the Mars Ketu, is that we are releasing value. So we could be releasing assets, we could be releasing debt as well, depending on the house. We could be, and because people are releasing debt, what happens when a lot of debt is being released? Okay, there are no bonds, because when you're buying bonds, you're buying debt. Okay, we're going to be exposed. This Mars is ruling Rahu, that is conjunct in Aries. So Aries puts the intricacy of trade to you. This kind of like in your, it depends on the charts, kind of like in your face. And so yes, this is a very important. What troubles me here is the sun on the 11th degree. It means that you're going to have certain figures that are let down, that experience this crisis, and those situations where a person can kill themselves out of sudden financial crisis, are very troubling, especially if you're ascendant Leo, if you're any luminary ascendant. But if you're ascendant Leo or ascendant Virgo, or you have sun in Virgo, this is a solar return for you, then I don't know. What can I tell you magically? One thing I can say, maybe Moon Kazimi, because it's a good energy, but anything that helps you, okay? Anything that helps you. If you have been through these tunnels, and the 11th degree is not in strange to you, then anything that assists you, kind of bring back all the things that help you to not unalive yourself in such a situation. Because although the sun is not doing anything here, she's not aspecting anything in particular, she is on a degree of a person that can kill themselves, and not necessarily with a gun, but and this is something I am concerned about, and the combination of financial crisis and suicide is something I am concerned about. So please, whatever you can do, I hold my prayers for you, and I hold my prayers for these people, and it's a good time to stop and bless and Bless the people who will have to deal with this, or for whom would have suicide ideation, suicide thoughts, or sudden shock or sudden loss, for them to be able to withstand through this and to heal and to recover, and to have a good life with that. So remember, when the economy collapses, what we have is the people. That is very much in alignment with with the Pluto ingress into Aquarius. Okay, is we the people have to be humane to each other, and assist in whatever we can, because there is no economy without people. Okay, but there are people without economy. For short term, of course, we establish an economy. If we talk about there's a crisis, what happens when you have a crisis? Well, you have to find some place to stay at, or you have to find something to eat, and it's kind of like, what are my basic needs and how do I get them? And you only have the people to rely on each other for that. So it's a good time to remember that we need to be human to one another, in the good kind of human. Okay, we need to behave well with one another, um, uh, and and the Marsketo can also mean that if you had a certain wealth, you're gonna have to let go of it, or certain relationships as well. If you're like an Aries ascendant, this could be relationships that you're letting go of. Um, and then you have the ruler of the fifth and the seventh. So you have to be careful for your romantic partner, so to make it so that they won't want to, I don't know, unalive themselves. And it doesn't mean that they're like borderline or anything like that. It's just that's where the sun is. It can be a very sudden breakup. So October 5 and the time around it, okay, because there are degrees to that. Okay, conjunctions are degrees to that depending on the orb. But this is going to accompany us. The aftermath is going to be the eclipse. Okay, so this is a very eventful month. Okay, it's a very eventful time, even beyond, and that entire transit deserves an episode of its own. This is where Mars opposes Aries, the ruler of Aries in Aries, the ruler of discord, the ruler of what do you think is the best person? What do you think is a human? What is your I am? What is your definition of a person? And that ruler is opposing Aries. So there is an inherent inner tension as to your Aries placement per se. It's not an easy transit. Um, so that is one thing we have. The ingress of Venus to Virgo on October 9. Again, it's although Venus in Virgo is in detriment. She's exalted in Pisces, and please consider, I never remember if Aries or Virgo is kind of like the fall of Venus, but both of them are not the best. Venus in Virgo, and the reason she's not the best, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and Virgo is the sign of compartmentalizing things and intellectualizing things. It's the sign of your accountant, more so than it's the sign of your lover, because when we want to love, basically it's the details that we need to basically when we want to have a connection, we need to kind of like let a lot of details slide. Okay, we really need to let a lot of details slide. If you think about connection, about intimacy, about love, about being kind of impressed with one another, and a part of love is basically to let a lot of details slide. um, and and Mercury as the ruler of Virgo is a nitpicking sign, so that makes Venus, it's kind of like Mercury Virgo is when people, and I relate to that deeply because I have a similar nose, talk about the looks of Cleopatra. It's like, oh, she had a big nose and had a this and had a that. It's like other signs like that was Cleopatra. Okay, that was a woman that when she wanted to have an affair, the world map would change. Okay. And the Virgo is kind of like, she had this, she had that, she was this, like, hey, she's not like, or Virgo is kind of the sign that looks at people like Marilyn Monroe, and it's like, oh, she was a bit, if she was today, then people say she was fat, or she was this and she was that. It's like, that's fucking Marilyn Monroe. Okay. So Virgo and Venus are not friends. Okay. And if you have Virgo in the fifth or in the seventh, like me, if you're that unlucky, then you understand what I'm talking about. But what Venus can do in Virgo, Venus is value, and Venus is assets as well. Venus is cars, okay, and Mercury is also transportation and technology. So Venus Virgo can build a beautiful car. You think about Maserati. I haven't delineated anything there, but Maserati is very known for its design and as well for being a reliable car. Okay, it's a good car. It's a technologically impeccable car. It's not a fast car. It's a slow car. It's Italian. Although Lamborghini, yes. I need to do episodes on both of them. But both are produced in Italy, I think. Still, I need to check it. And so there's come this Venus, which gives us a great design for a public transportation, car. So Venus Virgo can give us beautiful design for technology. Venus Virgo can give us attention to frequency and detail. It can talk about the herbs that support our skin, that support our beauty. Okay, so while she's a bit nitpicky, it's kind of going to your cosmetician. It's like they look at everything and they're like, oh, you have these pores, and that thing. But eventually what they do this for is to make you more beautiful and healthy. And so Venus in Virgo is kind of like beautiful is healthy. Okay. Or the beauty of kind of a clean, clear skin. The pitfall with Virgo, again, they can be nitpicky, they can be perfectionist, but the very upside of Virgo is they can absolutely improve upon the details that make you more beautiful. And that allow you to connect because it's the sign of communication. It's like, hey, that's that detail. I know it seems nitpicking, but when we tend to that, our connection is way better. So you could actually, in a very peculiar way, learn to feel comfortable just because you pay attention to those details and you tend to them. Venus is going to conjunct Lilith on that note. So again, any hygiene products that improve your beauty or your fertility or your sexuality, how to clean your vagina in a way that is actually contributing you and not just marketed by big pharma or something like that. And there's the opposition to Saturn. So we're gonna definitely have a criticism of beauty products and the healthcare system. Is this makeup healthy for your skin? Stuff like that. Venus Saturn oppositions are never happy, okay, because Venus is connection and Saturn is criticism. So this is not a jolly ingress, but there's a little bit of improvement here with Mars on the 27th degree of Libra that is applying to sextile this Venus and Lilith. So as it's about to ingress into its home sign, it's going to be better when Mars ingresses, but it's kind of like, somebody criticizes your looks and then somebody else is fiercely attractive to just those things that the other person criticized. So who you're going to sleep with? If the first one is your husband, then you can see how that come into being. But then you might separate from each other on the ingress of Mars to Scorpio, which is separation. So it can be like that. It can be somebody criticizes your looks or somebody your appearance or your values, and then some other guy gets, other penis person gets the penis hard for just the thing that the other person criticized. You're like, oh, let's go for a ride. But also you have to see, is there something in what this Saturn is saying? Okay, if you're, let's say, putting on some makeup, and that makeup is made, I don't know, with an animal product, or experiments with animals that is not contributing anything to the health of your skin, it's kind of like it might be a good idea to listen. But if it's kind of like demeaning or needlessly criticizing, um, uh, so that is where, it's okay to go with the people to whom you give the heart on. So Saturn is also the incarnation test. Okay, if you're trying to launch a project, if you're trying to write something, if you're trying to bring something into fruition, Saturn is kind of like the final edit. Okay, the final cut of a movie, the final edit, where you do need to adjust. And this is a very inspective eye. Okay, right away before you're about to release a project, you need to know the everything of it before it releases. It doesn't mean it's not going to release, but it's going to go through a certain editing. And Mars here is trining this Saturn, okay? So an action of changing your image, your looks, or your values needs to be applied upon the embark of Venus into Virgo. Okay? So when it comes to business, when it comes to launching something, or maybe editing a movie, even with this, then this is a very favorable aspect where you just go through this contraction right before the launch. It's a very annoying thingy, but Mars is helpful because we're going to make the adjustment needed, and then we're going to launch this thing. Mars is going to be at home when that happens, but the moon is decreasing, so you better find another date for the launch, and that may be what you're consulting about, because Saturn rules time. So timing can be, it's like, hey, that's a great project. This is not the time to do so. And then you're going to find another election. So it can be very annoying. And it's right on the ingress to Virgo. So anything you want to release that is like a book or something like this, it's kind of like, oh, that's so annoying. Oh, damn, I have to change the election, or I have to change this. But Mars is going to take care of that. So not worried about the Venus ingress into Virgo. Mercury ingress into Libra. So Mercury leaves its home sign and becomes ruled by Venus. Now, Mercury in Virgo is the nitpicker, but it also does not lack humor, okay? Which is needed, because Virgo tends to those details that we don't pay attention to. It can often be embarrassing, and if we have humor around this, we can do something. But now Mercury is entering, okay, it's separating from Neptune. It's still in orb. Communication is still messy. The moon is applying to square it on the ingress, and it is separating from a trine to Pluto. So it seems like that when Mercury finally ingresses into Libra, we are already after the event, and the event had included certain communication that did not manage to transmit the depth that it did include, because it was trine in Pluto. Mercury Libra. So we are talking about politics. We are talking about diplomacy. We have certain agreements or contracts that perhaps we need to sign. Here the moon is decreasing here. This is 5 October. We're talking about, I don't know, children. We're talking about perhaps the fashion industry in relation to children. There's all kinds of things that can come up. I don't find them to be particularly scandalous. Or we could be talking about the gender affirming procedures in children, because this Mercury still leaves the opposition to Aries. Not the opposition, the inconjunct to Aries, and it leaves the opposition to Neptune, and Neptune is also medicine. Okay, so it could also be surgery, and And the Pluto is to change something. Mercury can also be gender, so changing gender. And unfortunately, here with the opposition to Neptune, we don't have all the details we need to know about the medical procedure. Here, Neptune is about the hidden, the invisible. With the trine, we could say that we could definitely do something of medical procedure or even a healing, energetic procedure that would improve our looks or the way we feel about our gender. And here, while there can be the psychological depth needed to make a decision, being informed about the nature of the medical procedure or the side effects or the lethality of a certain procedure to change your looks, cosmetic or gender, can be a problem. So people can be disillusioned when it comes to medical ethics of talking about what are the possible side effects and so on and so forth. Um, so this can be a conversation, and I do predict this conversation to be surrounding the eclipses too, which are in Aries. So that's another alignment to pay attention to. Um, and then Sun ingresses into Scorpio on October 23, which is going to be right between eclipses as well. Yeah, the sun ingress into Scorpio. Well, Mercury is combust with the sun, so it's not a Kazimi. Mercury in the light of the sun or Mercury invisible. Is Mercury visible or not? We will have to wait for Gracie. I don't know how she computates that. And it's not the degree, okay? Visibility is not the degree. Visibility is the visibility in the sky. And that's why I have to observe the sky, see when Mercury becomes visible, when Mercury becomes invisible. And it changes, I think, from morning to evening star with this one. So I will just have to wait on the people who have the right technology and knowledge to do that, like Gracia Tassio, to give us the real visibility of Mercury. But here we're talking about the sun. And the sun is not really doing anything much. She's separating from a square to Pluto, ingressing to Scorpio, with the ruler in Scorpio, strong, Mars, again, not really doing anything, and closer to Mercury. So it's Sun in Scorpio season. It's going to be depth of communication. There are going to be certain culmination, or it can be a culmination into separation because Mars severs ties. But Mars is also taking action about something, and we are heading to a growing moon in the here. Yet the ingress is like this ingress is not going to be like this tremendous impact that is felt. The main things that are going to happen will be 5 days later, which is going to be the eclipse. So now I can't really do this episode without a brief look at the eclipses. So 14 October 2023, and immediately I'll turn on asteroids because we can't really talk about these eclipses without talking about, to some degree, Spica, but mainly Aries in Aries. And so, what's interesting? What's interesting is that we have, oh, that's good, better graphics, that we have, worse graphic, it looks like it's in Scorpio. This is better graphics. Okay, that we have the sun and moon in Libra, 21 degree, okay, with Keto in 25 degrees of Libra. Rahu is right on it with Aries. Okay, Aries is 24 degrees, Rahu is 25 degrees, and you better bet in October 28, Aries and Rahu are going to be right on the degree. So, what is this Aries thing? Okay, that Aries is discord. Aries is that viral poisoning. Aries is, when I say discord, okay, I mean the type of it's a heated conversation that has a billion sides. You think about a Rashomon, okay, that can be an Aries case. You think about a controversy that has so many sides to it,
that you can't make a decision in thinking in black and white thinking. Okay, this is Aries. The card of enlightenment is, hey, but there is this aspect, there is this aspect, there is this aspect, there is this aspect. Aries in general theme goes around trying to define what is the I am. Okay, I think, therefore I am. I have a genetic race of so and so and so, therefore I am. I have these beliefs or religions, therefore I am. Who can be human? Who is a rational player? Who is irrational player? Okay, rationalism, as well as the Übermensch, okay, eugenics, and the former sister epigenetics, okay, trying to read the skull of a person and say what kind of a person this is. This is all associated with Aries, okay, and um, Aries puts those who have been marginalized by our standard of what is human at the forefront. And she goes through various perspectives of perhaps being able to relate to people you didn't expect being able to relate to, or um, really tossing and turning with our self-assertion definition, self-definition, autonomy, freedom. What is the definition of freedom? The mind. What is the mind? Is it the brain? Is it the consciousness? What is the I am? Who is the I that thinks? All those things, from the philosophy to the very concrete um, decisions that we make also politically. And Aries in the Mars rule sign also rules poison and poisoning. Um, Aries is man-made, so it can be man-made ailments, man-made poisons, man-made disasters. Um, and the point is basically, if you have a problem, okay, let's say one person is dealing with this problem. One person is dealing with this problem. Nobody's going to allocate money to this one person that is dealing with this problem. What are we going to do? We're going to either create an image or genuinely make many people dealing with this problem. Now, if you understand what kind of problems does one person dealing with, sometimes it can be, well, I just wanted to go from China to the United States by air in 3 hours, and and it's just for leisure time, and I really wish I had this. So you're going to make everybody desire to go from China to the United States for some reason, maybe even some necessity, depending on how desirous you are. But there is another type that only certain people deal with. That can be, I can give you an example. I once talked to, it was actually a person on OkCupid, and I thought he was from like Serbia or something like that. He said, no, we're neighbors. I said, what do you mean? He's from Syria. But it wasn't just from Syria. He was Babylonian and Christian living in Syria. So he told me, I'm a refugee. If I was from Iran, I would get a job no time. If I was a Muslim, I would get a job no time. Okay? But because I am a minority amongst the refugees, some church helps me a little, but no, I cannot work, I cannot this, I cannot that, and all the things that Jews deserve to other refugees, I don't get. Okay. Now, of course, being a Christian, it basically means you are of the people who were protected by Bashar al-Assad, who was protecting minorities in Syria, and of course having to oppress the majority, but otherwise it would have been genocide. And so people were helping those who were supposedly oppressed by Bashar al-Assad, and that is Aries. Okay, I haven't like I don't remember the charts. It doesn't matter, but it's like this is an Aries story. Okay, it's the person that deals with the marginalization of marginalization, kind of like multi-marginalized people. Okay, now how do you make the entire world, as much as you can, deal with the this one person's problem? Okay, you have to be very innovative, very inventive. Okay? So there probably has to be some uh, uh, a medical, a medical issue, but the medical issue that what they say helps you doesn't help you, and it's kind of and people, when people start to gaslight you, when your doctor start to gas, oh, something like that. Okay, or you say, oh, this has to be a natural disaster, but not to have a natural disaster that is kind of like a natural disaster, but it's like something like a bomb going somewhere, and then something weird political happening there. It's like, but everywhere, so that everybody will understand what it is. Okay, that is also Aries, and this is where we get the more difficult side. Is that how can we tend to these things without having to go through a crisis? Because those things are usually invisible to us when we make up our world policies, which is what this eclipse is about. We usually don't think of the marginalized of the marginalized. When we make our medical decisions, we think that double blind um, evidence-based medicine with two control groups and so on and so forth is the best deal because we think scientifically, but it doesn't cover for the people who are exactly those marginalized, and those people die on your experiment. Okay, there's way more to it than I talk about when I get to beta blockers. But the thing is that um, when we have those Aries cases, they are very much invisible to many of our epistemic standards for empiricism. Okay, for how do we know that we know something, as well as ontological units that we think about. Okay, if we think about I don't know, let's liberate women. So everything with a vagina is a woman. Okay, now we have some women with a penis. Oh shit, what do we do? But now we have some of those women with a penis sexually assaulted women with a vagina. Oh heck, what do we do? Okay, it's like, how do we enforce will and consent now? Okay, that is very much the Aries issue. That's going to be highly highlighted with this eclipse. So we have a new view, there's new marginalized people. There's also new understanding of the marginalized. New people are going to be marginalized. Okay, and you also think not only about the kind of like what all me miserable. It can also be well, I can speak about a concrete case. When I was in between houses, my name is Youngblood. I grew up in Israel, did not know anything about my name. When I was in Netherlands, I was in shelter. Apparently, that family name have a lot of people living in the north and in Harlem, which is actually a high, like, I don't know how elite it is, but it's actually considered a wealthy family name, wealthy surname. I had like nothing to it, nor did I require anything to it. It's treated to be expected to be treated with respect as a citizen of the world. Uh, but but the thing is that that had affected the way that I would be perceived. It's kind of like, oh, well, who is this young blood doing in a homeless? And I was like, yes, young blood can be homeless too. So it can absolutely mean that it's kind of like the white woman that escaped violence and is living in the street. It's kind of like, oh, she's white privileged. No, she's a survivor of violence and she doesn't have a place to stay. And those kind of things. While it can absolutely be the black trans neurodivergent queer person that lived in this red pill country and is happening to be pregnant in an abortion, it can be both those type of marginalized. So that those people are going to be at the forefront. We're going to be talking about them. We're going to be seeing them. Some of us are going to be them, which I'm not really excited about because it's on my Mercury, is the ruler of the seventh and fourth. But that's life. And so this is a very heavyweight eclipse. We just touched a bit of it because it's going to be with Pluto square in the nodes. And what is Pluto square? Okay, Pluto trine. Pluto trine is the inner transformation that you go to in a way that is more accessible that you're more willing to go through, that's easier to tap into. Well, Pluto squares, what happened when Pluto last squared my Mercury? Okay, I was in between houses because Mercury was my fourth house and my seventh house, and I got into a position where I had to let go. It's kind of like a spiritual teaching. I had to let go to the point that I was with my wallet, and that's it. And then I found a house to live in and got nearly all of my property back, property and belongings, kind of like my clothes, my stuff, my puppets, my stuffies, my stuff. And it's kind of like going through this complete, you know, going around in the underworld, being completely absolved of nearly all of my belongings, just stripped from all of my belongings, and getting my belongings back. Okay, it is incomprehensible to begin to describe this. I don't have a word for you to, like, it's beyond. Did it make me a person that is less attached? Sometimes it actually made me more attached to it. It's like made me traumatized, but it is a very fascinating experience that I went through. Okay, that is Pluto square. That is Pluto square. Um, it is a crisis of a transformation. Okay, it's something that you're not so willing to let go of. That you make the effort to let go of, and you're being very rewarded with wealth. So, with me, it was also with the house that I live in one of the best locations. Um, and so, but then there is another eclipse on that with Pluto square in the notes. And so this is a crisis. Is it a financial crisis? Absolutely. Is it a political crisis? You better bet. Is it a medical crisis due to Aries? Absolutely. Could there be natural disasters? For sure, due to nuclear activity. It is an eclipse. It's not the first time we have Pluto square in the notes, but it's, what did we have? We had the war in Ukraine. We had the Aries variant. We had COVID. We had the BRICS getting rid of the dollar but joining Iran. We had a change. Really, I received a lot of channeling as a change in the relation between states. Bingo. Okay, and we're still amidst of that. So I don't know if I can. If I don't know if I want to channel those stuff. But I was able to channel then. Now I feel so exhausted, that overwhelmed. Although I desire to channel, but I feel also exhausted and overwhelmed. So that is the first eclipse with Pluto square in the notes, with Mercury close to this eclipse. So Mercury is also trade. It is what it is. It's definitely a blessing in disguise, but it disguises itself very well, the blessing. Okay. Okay. Those crises are blessings in disguise, but all the mask is compelling. Is a very good disguise. It's so much so it is very difficult to identify the blessing in the disguise when it's such hard aspects. So it is an eclipse. People ask me about and I made an episode about that. It's, the WHO, the climate lockdowns, natural disasters, all of that, all of that. Yeah, people were like, will there be another lockdown, climate lockdown? I was like, yeah, with what will it be? Maybe we would prefer lockdown. Okay, so yeah, there is me calming you about about the eclipses. Okay, it's a blessing in disguise, but it's very well disguised. And now we get the other eclipse, which is in the end of the month. And this is with an exalted moon and sun in 5 degrees Scorpio. So there, if I haven't felt the eclipses enough, now I have another one with Rahu on Aries next to my Mercury and Moon on my Venus. So if you're wondering, I am still single. Nothing changed. But the thing is that Moon in okay, those eclipses, those eclipses are they are ones that where if a new moon it's the start of something new, the full moon is the letting go of something. Okay, but the moon is close to Rahu, so we are and yeah we are in a situation where there's a certain like the change in the way that we see things is due to exposures, due to something being fully shown in its absence. Now I need to check whether these eclipses are, I'm going to do it in the easy way, which is the less visually attractive way, but I'm going to do it like this. Eclipses, eclipses, eclipses. No, yeah, eclipses. Not Gregorian, Julian. Naya. Oh, now I have to go down all over again. Yeah, eclipses. This one. And so, yeah, the October. So we have an annular solar eclipse. This is the 14th and a partial lunar eclipse. And so something is full in its absence. Okay, it's not a full eclipse, it's partial, but it's basically there's like, if I think about collective forgetting, you think about you want to, I don't know, between us, you want to look for some, well, here's not information. Maybe you want to contact someone and you discover that that they are gone, or how should I say it? It's kind of you discover that something has been omitted from the picture and it is standing full in its absence. Okay, something is standing, so you see the you are aware of the absence of something that you don't see. I can give you a trade example for this. When I was working with the door key set by Spear and Sundry, it's a great talisman for me at least. And I was going to an investment company and I wanted to pitch an idea that has to do with me. And I said, okay, if we had transparent, people are looking for transparency, and I was progressing into an air sign, why won't I invest, whatever I have to invest, which is the sum of money that anybody, even a person who receives, like a beggar who receives money, can invest this, and we will follow the cash. We'll follow what my money does transparently. We have a 24/7 broadcast, and then find patterns in it, maybe astrological patterns, and people can be excited, both educated about trade. And the company that I was channeling, that I was heading to, it was a company that was making investments with the clients that where you invest your money at, then when your government invests the money, the wealth that the government gets, or when the kind of like, where does JP Morgan invests their, their yield? Those companies, okay? And of course, the CEO said, well, we don't expose. I said, okay, even better. We're looking for transparency. Yeah, I do have this Mercury in Aries that is able to do that and get away with that. So no cameras. I even didn't know where I'm getting to. And he said, no, we don't expose our partners. We have very big partners. That was someone that allowed me to meet him and said, very big partners in the private and public sector. And summer let me in and called the CEO. He said, we don't expose our partners. We don't do cooperations. Now you understand that when you become aware of this, you become aware of the fact that, let's say you get, I don't know, you got sick, then you get money from the government. So you think, oh, this is taxpayers' money, or maybe it's my money, I pay taxes, and so on and so forth. But it's not only that you pay taxes, okay? That money is being invested. And the money that you pay taxation is being invested, that brings yield. So it's becoming exponentially. And not only is it because it's greater sum of money, but because the brackets of investments open up. So the gates of wealth open up for whether it's your country, whether it's your insurance company, your bank even, they open up so much that the yield that they are able to make, okay, because they are able to put their money there. If I surely wanted to put the money there, say, can I beggared some $5 and I want to make money so that I will have more reason to work and feel like it's doing something. Um, I wouldn't get the ability to invest there because you have to have a big chunk of wealth to even buy a single stock or a single bond. And so not only do we not know about those secret investments or what are they made of or who is oppressed and who is winning, but it means that when you pay, even if you are, I don't know, receiving money from the welfare, okay, you pay VAT, okay, this VAT, it becomes this huge, huge chunk of money that is being invested in creating yield. And this is your money. Okay, so the thought that we are living on the account of somebody else's money or somebody is living on the account of our money is also inherently wrong, even if um, it, the tax that they pay is basically VAT. Okay, and so when we get this, what we don't know that we don't know, it's like I don't even know what these companies are, but for sure I know that the yields are high, and for sure I know that there's a reason we're not being exposed to them, because this is our money. Okay, it's a lot more easy to make people think that if, let's say, you took a loan and you expect the tenant to pay it back, and once it was an okay business, okay, it was not always terrible. um, and what happens eventually is that the tenant cannot afford it, or that somebody, that company that holds that, interferes in a way that you think that your tenant is bad, but you cannot really see your tenant. You can just interview him in the beginning, and then you have to sell the property, and kind of like the house flippers. So they want to convince you that you have tenants that don't want to work, that make poor life choices, and so on and so forth. All the while, it's not it's like you point the finger of blame at each other rather than, hey, there's something that we don't see. So the blessed thing about this eclipse is that something is going to be very visible in its absence. Where is our money invested? Um, and that has to do with finances, with assets, with stocks. Well, where is Saturn? Saturn is a sextile and trine in it. So with bonds, to do with medicine. Okay, Saturn. Okay, this the long-term debt that we have for maybe development of medical technologies. Um, but here it's mainly about those deep fiscal, the real estate market. Okay, there is something that we don't see. It's going to be visible in its absence. With Rahu in Aries, perhaps certain unnatural natural disasters. Okay, what happens when there is suddenly a natural disaster? All the places closed, and like people have been calling, in many cases, okay, to land owners and like, do you want to sell your house? Okay, and people are it's like you can't drink anything because they don't allow you to go out. The water is polluted, and you're like, okay, maybe I will get money, I will buy me a drink, I will buy me something. um, and that is a part of how the real estate market is changing. Okay, and that is becoming a big, 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 big issue. So here something is going to be very visible in its absence. What is missing? There's something is great that is missing, but we haven't been considering the gap. And this is going to be doing with real estate, it's going to be doing with assets, with land. For example, okay, did you know that you don't own? the property that you have. You can spend millions of dollars buying land, but you don't really own the land because, let's say, depending on your government, maybe your government pays money to the Great Britain, and um, and the money that you're paying is basically to hire the land for a very long term. When that contract is abrupt, we recently had that in Israel a while ago, and then we had another argument of territory between Jordan and Israel. Should we renew the contract? Okay, they already have agriculture, already have people living in these territories. And in that case, it was not settlements, just territories. So what is missing is going to be evident. Okay. For example, and it's not going to be evident in the sense that you know what it is. Depending on Mercury, maybe will be visible as Mercury opposing Jupiter. So there's the practicality of real estate, the practicality of deep psychology even, versus the theoretical belief around land or gender in this case. But here I predict this more to be doing with real estate, with land, with ownership on land, with the trade market, and to some degree with the stocks that we have related to medicine. Okay, the law that maybe the stable stocks, the pharmaceutical stocks, that people have been, oh, that seems like a good idea. It's like, oh, that pill, makes this person feel better. That pill you give to people with heart attack. That pill is beta blocker and it causes your autonomic muscles to not contract. And so many people are dead because of it. Like you've been invested in it and you didn't even know that. So, but here you're not going to find out the missing detail in as much as you're going to find out there's a huge gap that you haven't noticed in the theory, in the actual reality of things. And who's going to fill that gap is going to be Aries and Rahu. Okay, there's a huge gap about things that we weren't aware of around land, around estate. It's going to be mainly that, and it's going to be associated with children opposing religion. Okay, religion, gurus, all things Jupiter. It's got children versus children. Okay, child trade, child labor versus, or children and technology. Is something like that. Because Mercury also rules children. Series is also going to be, part of the show. So and here is a big shout out to Empress Atlantis that talked about the ingress of Ceres. Ceres is also already going to be midway into Scorpio, so it's not that big part of the show. Humea is going to ingress into Scorpio. With Humea dealing with fertility, it's not going to not be an issue, but it's also yeah, it's in between the nodes and the sun. But the more it's like you want to have an exact on the degree, almost on the minute, Aries Rahu conjunction. Okay, this is a big event. You ask me, is Pluto still going to be square in the nose? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And the moon and sun are going to be separating from the square to Pluto. So, and this Saturn is still around this square, and Saturn is square in Sedna in Gemini. I don't know if that Sedna will play a big part, but Aries is definitely going to be the star of the show. And here we're definitely going to be aware of something that is not visible to us. What are we not seeing? Okay? You think about a situation where you want to do a Google search about something or someone, and you find out that no data exists about this person. Okay, you try to look for a journalist, and you find a caricaturist in Australia. This is a concrete case that I had. So missing information, like, oh, I did not know that information was erased. But this is more of a mercurial type. Here it is more of a land type, of an estate type, of a house. Oh, you come to see this house. Oh, I really wanted to see my childhood house. It's in so and so. It's kind of like, there's no entry to that property. We don't know a house here. Oh, we don't know a land here. Okay, and that it could be that kind of a thing. Something is very evident in it's being missing. Um, so this is the second eclipse, which we cannot not talk about. And again, it's very big events. The involvement with Aries is highly important. People talk about pandemics and stuff and natural disasters. Yes, all of the above, but it's way beyond that. The essence is to strip us of our eugenics mindset. That eugenics mindset that we entered in 1929, being able to perform it to by means of genocide, of horrid medical stuff, of even unfortunately, I believe that the part of abortion allowance was related to purifying of the race or the chemical castration and whatnot. All of these uh, things that have been in humanity. Okay, eugenics is not was not born in 1929, but definitely the ingress of Aries assisted in um, basically exposing us to the ways in which we have been uh, ruining humanity by trying to be better people. Okay, stronger, better, this and that, and that we have been dealing with many things um, regarding that. Okay, if for example, even if you talk about, let's say, being a victim, it's like, don't be a victim, be a survivor, be a this, be a that. What about the people for whom it's not accessible right now? Okay, you always have a choice. There is always a place that you can go. There's always a third option if you manage to make it. Um, and those mindsets that are good for our living, but then in excess or can reach a point of ableism, um, or the ideation of the athletic body. Hey, that person went through an accident, and look, they can run a marathon again. While it's very beautiful, we also don't want to get to the point where we um, allow that the many gates of mental health basically that are open to us to become um, restraining. Okay. Um, and so Aries is bringing out the marginalized, and because it's a 500-year cycle outer planet, it does so very slowly, and it does so through gradually allowing us to see into situations that we didn't conceptualize. And so honoring Aries as much as we can for these eclipses, honoring the intricacy of situations, um, is probably going to alleviate the cyst, or at least tend to this Aries here. So those are the eclipses. And what else do we have? Okay, we don't have just eclipses in October. And here I want to see what are the moments of grace. Because as you can see, this is a very eventful month, and the eclipses have to do with a crisis. So it's not like, oh, I can suddenly see things in a new way and I have this eureka around things. It was like a Uranus trine or something. It's not. So I want to see what are the points of a bit of grace that we can get in this month. So let's begin with the search for it. Um, it's definitely not the moon ingress into Taurus, but yeah, let's see, because the moon will go through Taurus. Let's see if it does manage to do something. The moon will conjunct Jupiter. Maybe I can go one more day with this. Yeah, the moon conjuncts Jupiter. Okay, this one is okay. This is October 2nd. Moon is conjuncting a retrograde Jupiter. It's not trine in Pluto. It's not trine in Pluto. It's trine in, I wouldn't consider it a trine. Oh, but it's not this point. Oh, it's showing me the Uranus. Okay, the moon is conjuncting Jupiter. It's not doing anything more. It's just conjuncting Jupiter, retrograding Taurus, and you've never been happier, there's not doing anything more. Venus is trining Aries and squaring Uranus. So while it's not the moment of grace that we have all been waiting for, you still have to take into consideration that A, Venus is squaring Uranus. She's still squaring Uranus in October. And that means you want to have, in as much as you can, some budget. Okay, you're not going to be sleeping very much. And you're gonna want your comfort food, and you're gonna want your comfort food to be weird, and you want to want and your expenses as well as your desire to go somewhere, drive a car, and go somewhere are going to be quite high. So don't expect on keep it in tight budget. Mercury does trine this Uranus. Okay, so you could be smart about something, but if you allocate money ahead of time to splurge and make sure that your schedule, in as much as you can, allows you to take a couple of days off, or a day off at least, because you're not going to be sleeping very much. But the moon Jupiter itself is a moment of grace. So while it's not the moment of grace that you've been expecting in serenity, it is a day where, unless you're doing some important communication, it's a good day for Netflix and chill. Just watch the what you're watching, because you could be watching gruesome stuff with this Uranus on the 22nd. But this is some grace. It's October 2nd. Ah, so, of course, the moon conjuncting Uranus is not going to be the moment of grace, not when Uranus is on the 22nd degree. I'm not going to delineate that. I've had enough of delineating Uranus on the 22nd degree, and I will probably delineate that when it's about to happen. Now, let's see the moon in Cancer. Okay, so what's it doing? Let's go. Let's go forward another day. The ingress is not lovely. And then it squares the nodes. Okay, no, it squares the sun. Listen, on October 6th, around October 6th, Moon is going to be in Cancer. It's going to sextile Jupiter, but square the sun. Now, Moon square Sun is like, it's not that troubling. Okay, it's kind of like, it can be like mommy says one thing, daddy says another thing, and you can't believe it, which can also be fun. But it's kind of like the right eye sees one thing that is different that the left eye sees, and they are not really able to align this tension. Okay, it's not something we should ignore, but it's not like the moon opposing Pluto or anything like that. And moon here is sextile in Jupiter, so it's a good time to enjoy a good meal. It's a good time to be next to a body of water, or perhaps if you're very cautious, swim. Very cautious because Mars here with Ketu in Venus sign. So yeah, easy on the gas, but definitely it can be a good time for if you're listening to music or singing, or having some, a picnic or something like that. That can be okay. You may have a little bit of philosophical understandings on this day. It's kind of nice. It's a moment of grace. It's around my lunar return, so I'm happy. And that is another place where the moon is relatively okay. So that is October 6th. And depending on where you live, it's going to be a Venus day or not a Venus day. And that's a good time to enjoy. Well, some people like the fire moon, the moon in Leo. Let's see if we have here something to like. And well, after the moon, let's see what happens after the moon leaves that horrifying placement with Pluto. Well, the moon will be squaring Jupiter. And again, it's not one of those things that are extremely troubling. It is a moon that is also going to be sextiling the sun, and the sun in Libra, and to some degree sextiling Mercury. It is an okay day, okay? Um, it's a time where you can enjoy, you can watch a show, you can be the star of the show as well with this one. You can, yeah, again, you might want to be a little bit more on the spender side. Venus, though, is on the 29th degree opposing Saturn. So it's a combination, it's a mixture of good and bad, but something nice can come out of it. If you're going to watch a show, if you're going to do something performative, that is not particularly Venusian. It's more like, I don't know, it's going to be particularly Venusian. It's going to have a mixture of good and bad. It's not the grace that we've been looking for, but it's not the most horrible either. But it's not an election to do something. An election to do something could probably be the moon in Cancer here. So, what else do we have? Um, yeah, moon Virgo is going to be between Saturn and Neptune. So, not too excited about this. And let's look at the moon in Sagittarius, which is another fire sign, kind of freedom, optimism. But let's see if that's a good yield. And it begins with a square to Saturn, but it doesn't stay there very long. Okay? The devil comes to Georgia, but it doesn't stay there very long. And then the moon squares Venus in Virgo. Okay, it's kind of like it's not the best day for romance, but it's all in all a good moon. It's a free moon, it's an optimistic moon. It has Jupiter in the 12th in Taurus, trining this Venus. This is a good time for a good time. This is also a growing moon, so if you want to plant some seeds, or you might even doing some public speaking, depending on what it is that you're aiming for. Mercury is not so favorable. Mercury is with Ketu here and right next to the sun. I haven't chosen the eclipse, right? No. So just making sure. So this is a moment of grace. This is October 18. This is a moment of grace. You can do some stuff. You can start some stuff. If you absolutely must launch something, it's not. Oh, this is Mercurial. There's a problem, but you can absolutely like release some stuff or sow seeds or begin a project. If it is very highly Mercury related, like a book or some trade portfolio or something like that, and that's not an election because of the Mercury conjoining the planet of letting go of the past and so on. But other than that, you could study the north node and the south node. Mercury Ketu can be that you are learning about the astrology of Ketu, and that could be a great time to do that. And it could bring you a lot of joy, just this act of learning something with Venus in Virgo and Jupiter in Taurus. Absolutely, you can study, you can schedule studying about the nodes, eclipses. That can very well be a good decision. Oh, the nodes and trade. So even though the information you may find will not be uplifting, you will enjoy studying that. Moon in the lesser annoying, lesser annoying malefic. This is the Saturn of Aquarius, and although Moon in Capricorn is in detriment, the Moon in Aquarius is kind of like when we have a bit of a relief from this heavyweight Saturn. So while the ingress is still having these hard aspects, let's see how it goes. Well, we will have a moon square Jupiter and squaring Mars. Yeah, moon square Mars is not a moment of grace. Moving on. So this is like the moon in Aquarius is not the place there. And yeah, moon in Pisces, it's interesting. It is a water element, but it's the moon that can be, in the lowest of lows and highest of highs. So, and it's going to begin with conjunction with Saturn. Yeah, I can't tell you that I find too much grace within the disposition of the moon, and then it's going to oppose Venus in Virgo. The opposition of Moon and Venus could be okay, but when Venus is in the nitpicking sign, that's not a place you will feel emotionally safe in as a Pisces moon. Um, then we have Moon in Aries, which is another fire sign, a little more active, kind of like you're feeling safe having your ass kicked or kicking some ass. Um, and the ingress is actually looking pretty. Okay, the moon is separating from conjunction with Neptune and sextile with Pluto, and is applying to sextile Uranus, not doing very much otherwise. Traditionally, it's considered a void of course moon. Now, I don't know about the lunar mention there. If it's a lunar mention that you like, you might want to do a lunar mention talisman. If it's a face that I think the face is actually the Mars, so it's probably not advised. Um, whereas there, if you find a fixed star that you like there, I don't know, maybe you want to go there. But other than that, it's still traditionally a void of course moon. And by the time it gets out of the void, it's already applying to Chiron. So depending on what you do there, if there's some magic ritual you're doing with the lunar mention, that can be great. It is a growing moon, but other than that, look at the lunar mention, see if you like the lunar mentions. But other than that, it's void of course, so you're not going to enjoy that much. Okay. Um, so October 28th, yes, the moon enters Taurus again. I don't think that we have an election like around the eclipses. It's going to be impactful even in the days after. And Gemini on October 30. Well, when the moon ingresses into Gemini, which means it conjuncts Sedna. So this is a time where you want to honor Sedna. But other than that, this month is heavy. It's very eventful, and it's eventful in a way that there's going to be crisis in the air. You're not going to be bored, that's for sure. Um, so it's an interesting month, and other than that, um, with eclipses, so this is a good time to kind of talk about uh, eclipses, who feels eclipses, and people say eclipses are mainly felt on a mundane level unless it touches something personal in your chart. Um, so you want to pay attention to axis. What is axis? The eclipses happen on both the cardinal and the fixed axis. Okay. The first eclipse on the cardinal axis. What does that mean? Where is Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, and Libra in your chart? But the plot thickens as every sign has a ruler. So where is Mars, Moon, Venus, and Saturn in your chart? Okay, the plot thickens even more. How do these aspect whatever planets that you have? Okay, how does the lunation, the nodes, aspect with and the rulers, okay, Mars and Venus, aspect whatever planet in your chart? And when you get that, then you can begin to understand that you're going to see the eclipses around you. Whether it's your partner, it's your spouse, it's your sister, it's your pet, it's the neighbor's pet, um, all of the above. Yes, you're not just going to see it on the news. It's very likely that most of us, unless you have like, I don't know, all of your planets in one sign, and that happens to be Gemini, but even the Mercury is getting closer. So you're going to be affected. And now you can say, can you do it for the 12 signs? Well, if I want to be oversimplified, for sure I can take something and I could do like, the Aries, where is Aries in your chart and what's going to be affected. And just for the sake of it, no, I don't have enough battery for doing that. But that would be incredibly redundant, and it would give you some information, but it's not the whole information. And again, you can know what topics will be affected by it. Venus and Mars also rules
penis and vagina. Okay, so whether it's the gender issue, gender surgeries, whatnot, all these topic, gender essentialist, gender not essentialist, gender blender, but it can also means romances, our finances, and all those things. So our romances, our finances, and kind of all of the above. And that's something that we need to kind of take a look at before we make any practical decisions. And yes, for some of us, those decisions are going to be fated. If you're ascendant, Aries, Taurus, Scorpio, or Libra, and to some degree, yeah, Pisces and Virgo, because the Venus is going to be in Virgo here. Then it is something that can be a fated thing. Okay, and depending on what fated means on your chart, okay, if you may have a lot of spirit in Venus sign, that means that like right now I have Uranus going through it, it means that things to do with the Venusian I may have leverage. I can make choices around, or make the choice to have interference, or the way I interpret it or the way I voice it has an impact. Okay, but if that's kind of like on your lot, a lot of fortune is there, and a lot of spirit is like somewhere completely else, then some of these decisions are going to be fated for you, the fated separation, and that can in some way be a fated commitment as well, because remember the issue of the details. We commit to people based on what we know, what we feel, and our judgment. And some part of our judgment can seem very true to the time being, and that can change, and those changes can be fated. And so you ask, why? Just it served something in the world. This is where outer planets to inner planets come into play. This is where eclipse cycle come into play, where you have to look at Aries. In Aries, how do you present kind of like a part of what this world is about, and so on, and the themes that Aries brings. And some things are just, it just happens. So when you look at, am I going to be having a choice around this, then there are various degrees of choice that you may have around the topic. There is the work that we do with magical talismans, or honoring the planets that can have an effect, a discussion with the chart, a discussion with the fate. And then there are some things that happen. So this is according to like what I've seen. And also, if you are a child of eclipses, the closer you're born to an eclipse, the more you're going to feel like, I make plans and then life happens. And this is also a part of what is going to happen for you around eclipses in general, and around these particular eclipses in particular. So that is October. I think, yeah, it's like doing study for usually when we do a 12th sign forecast, we take something and then we do it, and it can be nice and popish, but it's also quite redundant to try and do it like this. Now you understand why. And yeah, I'm running out of battery, so I'll just say thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.